Greetings everyone, my name is Rejnols, and today we're doing a video about the 4 enhancements available for Custodes, and just a quick talk about enhancements in general. Enhancements are the new version of relics and warlord traits from 9th and 8th edition, probably 7th edition as well, whenever that came into the game. But as you know, relics and warlord traits are out, and enhancements are in instead, and in general I think that was a good change. First and foremost, these things cost points now instead of command points. So in 9th edition you could pay command points to get relics or warlord traits on certain characters. However, this created a very unbalanced environment because they all cost 1 command point, no matter what it was. A warlord trait was 1 command point, a relic was 1 command point, but it didn't matter what effect that relic or warlord trait gave you, it was still 1 command point, which made it incredibly hard to balance, and most detachments and armies back then just straight up had 2 to 3 useless warlord traits and or relics, because if you were ever paying for a warlord trait or a relic, you would obviously take the good ones. And there were just a big discrepancy in balancing between what was a good trade and what was a bad trade, but they cost the same, which meant that you never saw some of them and you always saw the other ones. So balance-wise, I think it was a really good decision to go ahead and change the cost of enhancements from command points to actual points instead. As for the enhancements themselves, they've shown to be a bit of a hit and a miss, so we're kinda a little bit in the same situation as we were in 9th edition, where some enhancements are just way better than the others, but at least they can adjust these points cost now, right? So if one enhancement just proves to be so much better than the other ones, they can either increase the cost of that enhancement or decrease the cost of the not so used enhancements, and then maybe they will start seeing play. So for Custodes, we're obviously still using our index as of this video, which means that we only have these 4 options, and that's it. When the codex comes out, every single new detachment will have 4 different enhancements to choose from. Some of them might be the ones we already see here, but I do believe that every codex that's come out so far has had new enhancement for each detachment, but we never know, of course. So a quick overview, I'm going to go through each of them individually, but first and foremost, we have 4 options. One of them might actually be one of the best enhancements in the game as of right now, and another one might be the absolute worst enhancement, at least in its current state. One thing to note is that there is no enhancement for Sisters of Silence, so there's nothing you can put on those characters. All of these enhancements are only for Adeptus Custodes models. So if you are a big Sister of Silence fan, you will have to wait until the codex comes out, and then perhaps there will be a detachment that focuses on Sisters of Silence, or maybe there'll just be 1 enhancement in each detachment that you can give to a Sister of Silence character. Again, we don't know yet, we'll just have to wait and see. Alright, let's get started talking about the first enhancement, which is Inspirational Exemplar. This is a 10-point enhancement, so it is the cheapest option in the Custodes index. And whatever character gets this enhancement has a 5+ leadership. This of course means that whenever you do a battle shock test, instead of having to roll a 6 or a higher, you need to roll a 5 or a higher, making battle shocks easier to pass. Then also, once per game, at the start of any phase, you can cleanse a unit within 12 inches if they are battle shocked. This also includes the unit itself, so if the unit that you just failed the battle shock on also has the Inspirational Exemplar ability, then you can roll the test, fail the test, and then at the start of your movement phase, you can cleanse it. That being said, you cannot cleanse it in the same phase where you actually fail the battle shock test. So you take the battle shock test in the command phase before you score primary points. So if you fail it there, you cannot then immediately say, I'm going to cleanse it, and then score those primary points. So it's a little bit of a it's fine, it's okay, it's not amazing. It obviously means that you can get rid of battle shock if you need to use a stratagem such as fight first or -1 damage in a following phase, but you cannot use it to ignore losing some victory points for primary points if you happen to fail the battle shock test in the command phase. Inspirational Exemplar is what I like to call just an average enhancement. It is like never a bad option if you have 10 points left over, but at the same time, you shouldn't look for 10 points in your list creating to take this enhancement. It's more like, oh, I have 1990 points, I don't really want to change anything, I'm just gonna throw on Inspirational Exemplar on a character and call it a day. So yeah, it's fine, it's not a must include, it's not bad to have, it's fine. Moving on to our next enhancement, we have Veiled Blade. This is very simple, 25 points, and the character that has it gets +2 attacks, and then once per game, you get triple OC at the start of the command phase. Veiled Blade is one of those enhancements that feels really good to have, and it just speaks to every casual player that plays Warhammer, because more attacks means more damage, which means more feels good moments. The once per game ability of triple OC can help you swing some objectives in your command phase or in the opponent's command phase, either gaining you more primary points or denying your opponent primary points. If the character is in a guard squad, you can also use the triple OC to help make sure you get those full rerolls when you get on the objective. And an obvious candidate for this enhancement is obviously the Blade Champion. Getting +2 attacks on his Devastating Wounds profile is very nice. And getting +2 attacks on his precision profile is also very nice. That being said, as I mentioned, it's a very feels-good enhancement because it speaks to the power fantasy that everyone who plays Warhammer usually likes. My character is more killy, that feels good. But it's still not really a required enhancement. It's also 25 points, which means that it is sort of expensive. And it's not one of those like Inspirational Exemplar where you just end up building a list that has 25 points left over. I mean, that can happen, but it's not something that usually happens. So it's one of those enhancements that you include at the start of your list building, and then by the end of your list building, you look at it and go, well, if I cut this, I could get this instead, so that's probably better. And that's how I feel about it. It's not at all a bad enhancement, but it's just one of those where it's good, but it's not required. So unless you just happen to have 25 points left over, or if you're just a really big fan of having big killy character, then it's absolutely fine. It's like a 7 out of 10 enhancement, right? It's never bad to have, but it's also expensive enough that you kind of feel like it takes up some space in list building. And then the best candidate for it is the Blade Champion, which, by the way, is a really good character, but maybe you just don't use any Blade Champions in your list. And it's fine to take on like a Shield Captain to get +2 attacks, but it's really nice having it on the Blade Champion because you can switch between the different profiles depending on what you need. So yeah, overall, Veiled Blade, good enhancement, but not an amazing enhancement. Moving on to the next one, we have Unstoppable Destroyer. This one is also 25 points, just like Veiled Blade, and the ability you get is that after you finish a charge move, you roll a dice, and on a 2 to 5, the unit that you charge takes D3 mortal wounds, and on a 6 they take 3 flat mortal wounds. The once per game ability is that every enemy unit within 6 inches has to take a battle shock test after you finish a charge. This one is bad. If you weren't already aware, Unstoppable Destroyer used to be a warlord trait in the Dreadhost sub-faction in 9th edition, which was my favorite sub-faction, and it would let a character pile in and consolidate in any direction as long as they ended within engagement range. So the thing you could do was that you took a Terminator captain, you gave him a relic that allowed him to heroically intervene anywhere on the map, then you would heroically intervene, you would activate him, but instead of going into the unit that you heroically intervened, you would take it and move it towards a character, for example, and just slam that character, removing any buffs or other things that the opponent got. It was a bit of a tricky thing, and it didn't really happen very often, but it was very fun and very cool. In 10th edition, however, it is really bad. 25 points to deal D3 mortal wounds is meh. You can think of it as paying 25 points to kill a regular marine on average when you charge it. And I know there's going to be someone in the comments that's going to be like, oh, but when I charge a tank, I can deal D3 mortal wounds, making me more likely to kill it. And to that I say, sure, but like, it's just not worth 25 points. Then there is the once per game battle shock thing, which again, battle shocks are amazing, except that it only matters when it matters, right? It only matters when they fail those battle shock tests, and battle shock tests are in general pretty hard to make matter. You need to have like -1, -2, multiple battle shocks throughout a battle round for battle shock to matter. So like the best case scenario you do here is that you charge something, you activate it, they fail the battle shock, and now they can't use strats on that unit. Which, I mean, is good, but it's still not good enough. I don't know what the average leadership of things is in 10th edition, but I think it's like 7. Do you know what the average roll you get on 2 dice is? If you guess 7, congratulations. So yeah, without further support of something that gives -1, -2 to the leadership, this one just doesn't really matter. It also happens in the charge phase, which means that it only matters for fight phase stratagems, and end of turn stratagems, I suppose. If you could use it at any point in the game, where you could like stop the enemy from scoring some primary points, or making sure that when they walk onto an objective, they don't actually control it, then it might be a little bit better. But as of right now, I would just take any other enhancement over Unstoppable Destroyer. So this is one of those where GW really, for some reason, should decrease the points cost of it, but haven't done it so far, so I'm not sure what's going on here. We'll have to wait and see, but for now, I would just completely avoid Unstoppable Destroyer and literally take any other enhancement over it. For our last enhancement, we have Ceaseless Hunter. It is 25 points. That is actually incorrect, sorry. It is 30 points. I just miswrote that for some reason. It gives the unit fallback, shoot, and charge, which is very nice for Custodes because sometimes you go into combat, you don't quite manage to kill whatever you got into combat with, but with this enhancement, it allows you to, well, fall back, shoot, and charge either the same unit again to make sure you kill it, or fall back from that unit, charge a different unit, and let something else clean up whatever is left of that previous unit. Then once per game, when an enemy unit ends a normal, advance, or fallback move within 9 inches of this unit, they may move up to 6 inches. This is also known as a reactive movement, and reactive movement is really powerful. Go ahead and ask Eldars how they feel about Phantasm nerfs. And yet, even after the nerf, Phantasm is still an amazing stratagem. So yeah, Ceaseless Hunter is what I would consider to be almost auto-include in every single Custodes list. The only reason it is not completely auto-include is that it is 30 points, and Custodes lists don't always have 30 points left over. However, I don't think it is wrong that when you start building a list, you take a character and you give them this enhancement, and you try and build the rest of the list around that character with the Ceaseless Hunter enhancement. It is extremely good. The reactive movement is amazing to have. If you stand outside of a ruin and something gets close, you can get behind the ruin and now you can't be shot at. If you're about to get charged by something scary, you can use it to move back so they'd have a harder charge, or you can use it to move onto an objective, giving you the fight first option when you're using the stratagem. The thing about this enhancement is that it's one of those that it is amazing to have, but a good player will not let you use it. Because they will make sure that they end their movements outside of 9 inches of that unit, and that feels bad. However, that is a good thing. You are basically creating a 9-inch bubble within that unit where your opponent just doesn't move into it. And if they do move into it, you have the options of maybe moving around and putting your unit in a spot where the opponent doesn't expect it. It is a tricky thing to use, but the most powerful ability in Warhammer is movement, where that comes normally from the movement phase, end of turn picking up units and teleporting them, or reactive movements like Ceaseless Hunter. The timing on the use is also very important, because you have to use it when an enemy ends that move within 9 inches. That means that your opponent can go, oh, I'll move this within 9 inches, would you like to use it? And then if you do use it, they can do the rest of their movement without having to worry about this. So it is one of those things that takes practice. You also need to consider where you can go with that 6 inches movement. Overall though, Ceaseless Hunter is an absolutely amazing enhancement, and I think you should try and include it whenever you can. And that concludes this video. This is one of those fairly straightforward and obvious videos where I just say things that you might already know, but some of you are new players asking questions about these enhancements, and I figured, let's make a video about it and go through why it's good, why it's bad, so on and so forth. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe for more Custodes content. My name has been Rejnols, and until I see you again, I hope you have a wonderful time.